Just want to remind you guys, this episode is presented by Prize Picks. Download the app today. Use the code JUICE to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. The standard. We've been hearing this for a while now, Derek. Oh, this is not up to the standard. This is the standard that we have. I must ask the question then, and we must ask the question, what is the standard for the Indianapolis Colts? Let's talk about it. All right, we are back. What is going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Your guys, Cody and Derek, back for another one, guys. And as you heard off the top, man, this word, the standard, this word, we have a standard, this phrase that the Colts have been uttering. And here we are, Derek, year number 4, no playoffs again. And I guess that just leads us to ask the question, what is the standard for the Colts? Because it's clearly not winning. I mean, we haven't seen that in a while. It's clearly not accountability. What is it, Derek? I must ask you. What is the standard of the Indianapolis Colts?
I mean, that's the grand old question, isn't it? This grand old standard word that, people have been talking about several times throughout this year. We heard it when Anthony Richardson tapped out of a football game for a play, and then Ryan Kelly proceeded to say it several times after that day and said that, that's not the standard in which that we portray ourselves, and, we're going to get him right. And then sure enough, now we're hearing it at the end of the year when the Indianapolis Colts are now kicked out of the playoffs once again for the 4th straight year. And now everyone's asking, what's the standard? Well, clearly, whatever standard the Indianapolis Colts are trying to go to, either the standard is what it is right now and the Colts are happy with it, or the Indianapolis Colts are far and away from what the standard is supposed to be. Cody, I think it's less about what the standard is for the Indianapolis Colts right now, but the better question is what it should be. And a couple different players did answer that today. But I think the Indianapolis Colts know what the standard is. They just haven't met it yet.
Yeah, or their standard compared to a winning standard, complete opposites, Derek. I mean, when you have former players calling you out, like former players who were part of Super Bowl caliber teams, playoff contending teams that are calling you out, I think that might be a telltale sign, Derek, that your standard and your culture is nowhere near championship or even contending level right now. And Derek, you mentioned it, with all the stuff we've been hearing right around this time about some of the culture issues around this team, right? With players being late to meetings, players not caring. I mean, this isn't just a isolated thing either, Derek. We heard it all the way back in 2022, when everything fell apart and the Colts collapsed in very impressive fashion in a very bad way. But obviously, it, led to a better draft pick. But it kind of seems like it's a similar thing here, with just the latest product of it happening now against the Giants. Derek, it's very clear that the standard here is not what a championship standard is. It's very clear that the Colts are content with just being okay enough. I mean, honestly, like if anything showed the Colts are content with being okay enough, it was the way they attacked this past offseason. I mean, bringing back and being like team run it back, right? That was the thing that people said the Colts were. And that's just so much like an encapsulation of the Colts culture right now, right? It's like, it's all about our own guys, but even if our own guys don't play up to the standard, who cares? At least we drafted them. They're our own guys, right? And it just seems like it's this franchise right now under Chris Ballard that is content sitting on its laurels, just does not use a avenue that Super Bowl contending teams use, right, to make their roster better. They don't do it. They don't do it because they have faith in their own guys, right? We've heard Ballard, we like our guys, we like our guys. Derek, how many years now has Chris Ballard said we like our guys, and it's come back to bite the Colts in the butt? I mean, years. It's been years. It's been almost his entire tenure at this point. Seems like every single year there are one, if not multiple, big question marks, but the Colts like their guys, right? And they're content with just being good enough, and they're not content, and they don't care about winning. They don't care about winning. And I said it to you before, I'll say it again. I think a lot of fans feel this way. If the Colts don't care, why the heck should we care? That's what they're communicating. We don't care about winning. So fans, I think a lot of fans are saying, well, if you don't care about winning, I don't care about supporting you. I don't care about giving you my hard-earned money. I understand that. I agree with that. So that is the culture under Chris Ballard that has been here since 2017. It's just, we just want to be good enough to potentially sneak into the playoffs. But every time we have an opportunity to rise to the occasion, we're going to fall on our face. I mean, it's embarrassing, Derek, but that is the culture of the Colts right now. That is their standard. The standard is subpar. It's not even mediocre. They have been
being
subpar.
Good enough, barely. And I don't even know if you can even say that either.
They're not good enough, though. That's the thing. It's like your very pillars, your captains, they weren't good enough on Sunday, and a lot of them haven't been good enough any given week. Maybe they'll have one game or a couple games where they play pretty decent. But again, Derek, it's crazy. You and I were looking at the captain list. There was like 8 captains, right? And we're like, maybe half of them contributed in a positive way this season. Maybe half, right? And that's kind of crazy thinking about you had 8 captains and only 4 of them. And you can even debate a couple of them, right? But there were so many that clearly were detriments to the team this year and were supposed to be your leaders. And they weren't even playing up to the standard. So if your captains aren't playing up to the standard, it's clear your standard is not a good one.
And not to mention, one of your captains even, brought it up that, hey, like the standard, and I'm referring to Kenny Moore in this regard. Several weeks ago, Kenny Moore even said that like some guys aren't living up to expectation. Some guys are taking it easy. Some guys are just taking the easy route and aren't really doing everything that's necessary to win games. Obviously, the standard is not come in here, Cody, work your ass off and play complimentary Colts football and win with your team. Clearly, that's not the message that we have here. Because if that were the truth, then guys like DeForest Buckner and Kenny Moore and all these other guys wouldn't have to constantly say that this team always finds a way to shoot itself in the foot, because obviously some guys care more about their own personal rather than on team success. And that is not the standard and the attitude and the culture of a winning locker room. That's just not what it does. Pat McAfee knew what that was like. Peyton Manning knew what that was like. A few other guys knew what that was like. And a bunch of those guys that are calling it out right now were part of a winning culture and were willing to go above and beyond. And guys that worked their butts off tirelessly all the time. And to be able to accomplish something that very few teams in the NFL get the gracious opportunity to compete for year in and year out. And obviously the Colts don't really care for that right now because they're not playing like pros. And I'm curious if anyone can tell me in the comments what the actual standard needs to be, because you know what, Cody, I'm even offended by the idea of saying that the standard is the playoffs. Like, that's not what winning teams say to themselves. The standard is not playoffs. The standard is competing for a championship. That's what you want. You making it to the playoffs should just be your bare minimum. That's what you should be doing. The really good teams of the league, they know they're making it into the playoffs. Their standard, go compete for a championship. If you're going to sit here and say that our standard is to make it to the playoffs and hope to get into there, then you're already a step behind. You're not thinking championship, you're thinking playoffs. Like, who cares? Like, playoffs is just the gateway to have a chance to go and win the big thing. So, like, fix your attitude with that, man.
Well, the 2024 NFL season for the Indianapolis Colts is in full swing. And with that, wanted to share the sponsor of today's video, Prize Picks.
When it comes to Prize Picks, this is going to be a great way for you guys, especially, to check out some of the stuff that Prize Picks has.
You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You heard me right. Only 4 correct picks. You can win 100 times your money, guys, on Prize Picks. Be sure to sign up today and get $50 off instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed.
So if you're looking specifically for the Colts stuff, that's definitely something you guys should check out. But if you're looking for, like me, more NFL stuff, there's all sorts of stats and stuff that you can check out and make your picks. And there's definitely guys that are very consistent, like Jonathan Taylor against the Houston Texans, that you really feel like you can probably feel pretty good about overall, right? And there's some other ones where you're like, I don't know if I would take the over on that. I don't know if I would pick them to hit that margin, right? So, guys, be sure to go check out all that stuff on Prize Picks. It's only a couple examples. There's all the different odds that you could hope for when it comes to that for Prize Picks. So I encourage you guys to go check that out, but definitely excited for this season. And hopefully you guys will be following along with us and everything with Prize Picks and what they do.
So be sure to download the app today. Use the code JUICE to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code JUICE to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Like I said, guys, it's a great way to continue to stay in with week to week life of the NFL, specifically with your favorite team, the Indianapolis Colts. So be sure to do that. Be sure to check out Prize Picks. And remember, Prize Picks, run your game.
Yeah. And it's just such a weird, amalgamation of the roster, too. We haven't talked about this a whole lot, but I want to kind of bring this up real quick, Derek, because on one hand, you have players who are ready to win. You have your DeForest Buckners. You have the guys that are getting a little bit up there in age. And then you have, on one part of your roster is like the veterans and they're ready to win now. And then you have another part of your roster that's developmental. And I'm like, how do you expect to win anything right now? This roster is so weirdly constructed right now, Derek. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense what the Colts were hoping to accomplish this year. I really don't understand it. And it's like, if you're going to be young, but that means you're not going and re-signing these guys. You're not re-signing Grover Stewart, right? You're not re-signing DeForest Buckner, right? You're going young.
Yep.
And if you're riding with the young hand, then do it. But if you're not, and the Colts clearly aren't, but you're not adding enough to support, and, if you're like, we're win now, we want to go, make the playoffs or whatever, but you're not doing enough in free agency, in trading, you're not doing enough to actually seriously compete, right? Then I don't understand what the point is. You can't have it both ways. You can't have half of your roster being developmental where the other half, is ready to compete now. It just doesn't make any sense. Those two never made sense to me, why the Colts did it and approached it this way. And I don't know if I've ever seen a roster quite like this where you have all this, veteran talent, but you still are so clearly not a championship level team. Because, Anthony Richardson, we knew he was going to have struggles this year. He barely has played. This was his first year he's played multiple games, where he's actually played, more than 3 or 4 games. So this is essentially his rookie season, and we knew he was going to have struggles. And it just is such a weird place the Colts find themselves in, and they don't really have, when you look at it. I asked you this question yesterday, Derek. I think I did. I think this was our conversation where I said, if I could ask you, who are some of the true superstars on the Colts roster? Who are some of the elite, the continual Pro Bowl, all pro guys? Let's not even say Pro Bowl, all pro guys. Guys that are top 5 players of their position. Who could you realistically argue? What'd you say?
I would say probably 3, maybe.
Okay.
Jonathan Taylor, and again, we've seen injury problems from that perspective. Quentin Nelson and DeForest Buckner. I'd say that's about it.
So just think about that for a second. A running back who, Derek, as much as running backs, like Saquon Barkley, prime example, they can be great. And they can be a huge asset to your team. I mean, we know how the market is for running backs. I mean, we know how expendable that position is right there. Okay. But I mean, that would be the one that has the most impact because he touches the ball a whole lot. Okay. I'll buy that one. But then you're telling me a guard, as good as Quentin Nelson is, I love Quentin Nelson. You have a guard and a 3-tech. And that is it. That you would say, honestly, are players that you could argue, and even some of them might say they're not top 5. Maybe more like the Buckner one and maybe the JT one if you throw in maybe the receiving portion of it too. I know JT is a great running back, but people could argue that, But other than that, Derek, you do not have the top level talent on this team that those championship teams have. You don't have that top flight wide receiver that's taking the top off the defenses. You just don't. You don't have that number 1 corner right now. You don't have that premier pass rusher. You don't have any of that right now, right? You don't have what I would say, Derek, are some of like the most important positions to figure out. And even quarterback, like you drafted a kid, but again, he's not anywhere near where he needs to be. So at this current state, some of the most important positions in the sport, you do not have a superstar at any one of those. You don't currently. That's where we sit right now. And that, I think, is a big reason why, along with the culture, that, Derek, you're sitting where you are right now. And that's why the standard has been missing the playoffs on a routine basis.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. People have said for a long time that, the having the talent in positions where it's just not as important, I guess I should say. I mean, again, every position is important, but there is definitely spots where you sit back and you're like, some positions are more important than others. And, how long has it been since the Indianapolis Colts have had, an elite quarterback level play, have had elite wide receiver play, have had elite defensive linemen that can get after anyone on any given day? It's been a long time, and Ballard's tenure has not been friendly when it comes to that specific part. But, again, after all that, and a lot of people would sit here and tell you that, again, the Indianapolis Colts have a lot of talent on their team. They do. And even Pat McAfee acknowledges that. But again, it's about the idea that he's never seen a group that, with as much talent as it has, that has wasted as much talent, opportunity, and money as this unit has. Like, again, it's just guys that have talent, but for some reason can just never put it together. And, that comes into question about, are these guys the future? And, are they going to be able to deliver the standard that you so seem to care about?
Right. And I was just thinking about this for a second, Derek. You haven't added a top flight talent since 2020. Like a guy that legitimately has been a top 5 player at their position. You haven't.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you added all three of those guys in the 2020 offseason. Think about that. You drafted Taylor, right? You added, you had Quentin Nelson. You also added DeForest Buckner. So 2018 and 2020, those are the only years you added any sort of premier talent, right? In terms of a position.
Yep.
You haven't had a single one since then that has been a long-term piece of your franchise. You haven't. That's a fact. And it just seems like every year you continue to not. And that's going to catch up to you, Derek. If you routinely, within your drafts and your failure to address free agency, if those picks don't pan out, if you have as much as, I think Kwity Paye is a fine player. If you have a Kwity Paye as a first-round pick, that's not good enough, Derek.
Mm-hmm.
That's just not. And I think this roster, like you said, is not devoid of talent. This isn't a Ryan Grigson roster, but I think the roster almost like completely personifies Chris Ballard's tenure in a nutshell. Or it's decent. Like, it's got some pieces to it. It's got some success, but also, Derek, at the same time, it's not good enough. It's just not. It's not good enough to seriously compete. Like, they have good players. They have decent to good players, but they don't have the elite of the elite. And they clearly don't have the culture either. So it's like a double whammy there, right? Because if you don't have the top flight talent and you don't have, the culture, and you have all these guys doing this, no wonder you haven't won double digit games, I think, since 2018 or 2020, maybe even. I think it was 2020, right, with Phil Rivers. You haven't had it in 4 years. There's a reason why. And I think those are the two biggest ones. Culture, I think, is the biggest one, but also, the failure from a personnel standpoint. And, DeForest Buckner is the only outside guy that has been a top player that you've acquired. That's it. You can't keep saying, we'll acquire talent. I did it with DeForest Buckner. Dude, that was 4 years ago. It's time to change it up. I think it's too late, Derek. I just frankly think it's too late. But that is the standard for the Colts. It's do enough to get by, but don't do enough to seriously compete. That's been the story of Chris Ballard for almost a decade. And I think a lot of fans, including us, are just fed up with it. And I think you said it yesterday, don't buy the BS that they'll try to spin to you. It's already kind of started a little bit with what some of the comments that were said here on Monday. And I think we're all kind of seeing through it, and we're not buying it, man. So we got about a little under a week from the time this episode will drop till Black Monday. So we will have to see what happens there. And hopefully the culture gets a complete reset, because I know you and I, we're ready for a new standard. We're ready for a new standard. This standard clearly has not been the standard that we need. We are all ready for something new.
Yep. It's time for something different. And it's time for the Indianapolis Colts fan base to have something that, can actually give us hope once again. We don't have hope anymore. We don't have any hope that this team is going to get to where it needs to be. And it's just time to start fresh and see where we go from there.
Yep. Enough of the hype of Anthony Richardson throwing it in shorts. Like, we're done with that bullcrap hype, like that we see every offseason, of, this is gonna be different. This year's gonna be different. It hasn't been. So we're just ready for a clean sweep, and hopefully the Colts do make that happen. I think if they don't, it's going to get ugly potentially. So, guys, let us know your thoughts in the comments below here. Be sure to smash that like button, hit subscribe, turn on the notification bell. Guys, we are under 250 subs away from 20,000 subscribers. So if you would help us out, we would greatly appreciate that. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, guys, go Colts.